Yo dogs, what's up? This is Frizzle. How's it going? It's been a while. So this is the project I've been telling you about. This particular part I've been working on for about a year or so, less than a year, and it is a voxel engine. So this is using Misa's texture pack from Minecraft, which is, 64 by 64 pixels, and this is all that. So the goal was to try and render a huge number of blocks with textures. And this right here is rendering about 1.5 million blocks at a time. Whereas with, systems that use pixels rather than straight up textures can get, maybe up to 3 to 5 million depending. And it's also important to know this is written in Java. And so there's some limitations potentially there that I've yet to actually run into, I think. So things are looking good. You might be asking, how are you able to render so many more blocks in Minecraft, right? Isn't that like, in a voxel engine, isn't that Minecraft's one downfall, the fact that it's written in Java? Well, no, actually. The reason why Minecraft doesn't have as high fidelity graphics as you might expect is because it's relying on OpenGL 1.0, which is a really old version of the API. Modern versions are OpenGL 3.0 and OpenGL 4.0, which about 90% of systems can actually tolerate, and I'm using 3.0. And so just by that, making that transition and using that complicated API, I'm able to get a lot more performance out of it, and I can render a lot more blocks because I can do a lot of low-level optimizations. And so you get a gajillion blocks. Now, I can crank this thing up to get, way more blocks and be technically real time, but here I'm still getting like 3 or 4 times as many blocks, right? But here it's like 20 FPS, I'm not gonna I don't wanna be fake about it. I don't wanna pose something that would not be the real end result. So, I think for a prototype and starting out, maybe not a prototype as much as just the initial embodiment of the voxel engine, this is really good, it's a lot of blocks. There's a level of detail system to where if you get closer to a chunk, it'll actually render it as being lower resolution. And you can kind of see that as I go back and forth here if you pay attention to that chunk that's kind of immediately in front of me. Yeah. And there's just 1,000 different widgets and knobs that I can tune that make substantial differences in performance and the quality of the generation of the terrain is based on Perlin noise and simplex noise, and just cranking some of the parameters of that can make this way more expensive, but it will make it, where the terrain's a little bit more finely grained, I will say. So yeah, this is the voxel engine. This is what I've been working on forever, and it's really been technically challenging, and I've been learning a lot. Currently I don't have any anti-aliasing going on. I could, but it's kind of like, I don't know. I'm just kind of getting this in a state where I can show it for a prototype. So that's the voxel engine. But what am I going to do with it? That's kind of the more pressing question to me. Mechanically and from a design perspective, why is a voxel engine a good choice for what I'm doing? Well, it's a space exploration game, right? You can even envision, as I'm looking around with the camera now, that I'm the spaceship, I'm exploring around and the terrain is loading at a reasonable rate and everything is visible. This is moving really fast, by the way. At normal speed. Like, this is Minecraft run speed, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, just kind of like this. And so if I were to zoom way out, Minecraft run speed is just because of that relative, everything being so far away. So, there's a lot of decisions to be made. Things like, how big will the blocks actually be at the end of the day? I don't know. I don't know how, when I say that, I don't know how big I want the blocks to be relative to your character, or each of these the size of your foot, or, are you 2 blocks big like in Minecraft? And so I might favor larger blocks because I really like the idea of loading a bunch of terrain and being able to have gameplay that, soars over all of this voxel terrain in a really entertaining and compelling way. So as I was saying, the game is going to be a space exploration game. My inspirations for it are both Dragon Ball and Star Control 2. And the idea being that, you are traveling through the galaxy and you are There's some resource acquiring going on. There's a lot of dialogue and narratively driven things happening around the galaxy. And you have a huge impact on all the planets and stars and the civilizations and things that are around you. And there's a lot of, like Dragon Ball level scale of ridiculous power and strength and might and displays of power. And so being able to like literally destroy the terrain as you fight and that sort of thing, and for it to be very twitchy and brawler kind of gameplay is what I'm going for here. Another important distinction that I would want to make is that I want the transition from planets to space to be very smooth. There's not like some kind of convoluted interface that's, oh, we have space exploration, and it's really just kind of like a way of selecting worlds, which is kind of what I get out of Starbound, and it's really disappointing. I don't know if it's changed since I played the beta, but the idea is to like really make the space exploration a little more meaningful. Imagine being a character of heroic legendary strength and being able to jump like ridiculously high in the scale of planets and mountains and that kind of thing. And so that's been kind of the goal with this. As far as plot and things go, I've been still kind of orchestrating that and putting it together, and I've put forth on the forums kind of what I'm comfortable committing to with the plot, because I really don't want to get too into it just yet, because I'm still kind of debating, gameplay mechanics and technology and stuff and getting all this crap together. So not being too high committal on that. So on the other hand, though, with music, I've actually been writing a good bit of music for a very long time. And not all of it was intentionally originally going to be for this game, but a lot of it now is being repurposed for that. And a lot of it's being written originally for the game. And I'm actually going to put up a video pretty soon of me playing a song for you on the guitar. And I might even strap something to the end of this video, just something purely instrumental. And, maybe put it to traveling around, looking at blocks. I don't know. But mainly it's just that I want the game to be a very unified and well orchestrated experience. And I'm doing a lot of different parts of this right now. Just pretty much everything but art, right? I'm coding it and I'm kind of concepting and designing it, and the plot and the music, and that's a lot of crap for one person, okay? And I don't pretend to be, amazing at everything, but it's just more of a matter of the fact that when one person, the fewer people can work on a thing, the quality can go way up just by virtue of it being fewer people on the project. Does that hold up when it's one person on the project, or two or three? 2 or 3, sure. One, so that's one of those things. The long term, I'll be looking to maybe work with other people. We'll see. But I've been looking at these the wiggly and waggly cubes and not saying anything about them. I'm sorry. But these are basically what are going to form, or at least in my current thinking, these are going to form the limbs and body parts of the creatures and characters in this game. So you can see they kind of move around smoothly. They are basically controlled by they are blocks, they are cubes distorted by three-dimensional Bezier curves. I have an equivalent kind of block that is rendered, and it is a three-dimensional Bezier hypercube. And you can just think of that as like a slime that jiggles and wiggles and kind of moves about, and it's just a cube that is distorted in a really arbitrary way. Those are more expensive, and I'm still working on them, but those will be really nice for doing like detail parts of like bosses and things. So man. So these guys are actually hardware accelerated, and they're all, as much work is being done on the graphics card as possible to render these, so I'm able to get a lot of them. I'm getting some screen tearing and stuff now, but it's all from the voxels. Like, I could crank this up to like 20 times the number of these, and you still wouldn't notice. The voxels, on the other hand, that's another issue. So anyways, that's just kind of a brief overview of the tech. I'm kind of thinking what else I should go into now, because I have additionally the space simulator, and that's pretty cool. I'm still optimizing that away, and there's lots of leaps and bounds to be made in terms of making that a little more performant. So before I, do a big tech demo, I want it to be pretty, I want it to be impressive, okay? Look, bro, look, it has to be impressive before I do a tech demo on it. That's just how it is. Um, so there's a number of issues with the Voxel engine I'm still working on too, and it's kind of at that point where I don't know if I'm going to stumble on optimizations and things that just make it explode with even more performance, but it's hard to say because I'm also still learning a good bit, but I seem to be doing pretty well just learning some of the really recent features of graphics programming. One of the things that I'm doing differently than Minecraft, apart from using a completely more modern API and really, really leveraging it and using tons of multi-threading, if you can see the little the debug info in the top left and top right. The one thing I'm doing distinctly is with lighting. I'm merging the light values on the corners of blocks. Excuse me. So with the corners of blocks, basically in Minecraft, it would actually be 3 different lights for each corner. So if I'm looking at this corner now, you'd have 1, 2, 3. And that takes up a lot of space and graphics memory. And instead, I just have 1 point per corner. And there's some big implications with that. And it means that, if I were to create a wall or if there was like a cave wall made of these and the wall was 1 thick for whatever reason, you could actually see light poking through the corners. Like where I'm looking now, it would be light as opposed to dark. So that is something to consider. I'm not really worried about it because the focus of my game is not creativity. It is to be able to manipulate the terrain, but not in like a really like fine-grained, analytical, creative way. Um, so yeah, but I'm still working on things like that, and again, not committing to much there. Who knows? Maybe I'll find a way to make it perfect in the near future, but currently the data for the voxels is just really compressed. And I guess that's about as much technical detail as I can go into to really help you to understand where this is and where I'm going with it. As for the terrain, this is not like final. There's a really low level of detail chunk. Oh, there it goes. So as for the terrain, it's not nearly in a final state, I would say. So like the way that the terrain is generated, like the form of the landscape and how everything is, this is just for testing. It could be anything. I have different patterns I use to test things, and this is just one of them. It's pretty high, I would say, it is low granularity because you can see how like bulbous the terrain is and how smooth it kind of looks. And with true terrain, I think it would be a little bit more granular and a little bit more sharp, while still having some of the larger bulbous features. And having both the fine granularity and the large bulbous jutting of the terrain is kind of expensive. And as you add layers of that, it gets more and more expensive. So something I'm still looking into. But I think that about wraps it up for now. Hopefully this has been exciting to you. I'm working on a number of things. I'm planning on a number of things. Everything is written in Java, and so theoretically it could be moddable and extensible. I'm even considering putting spell script in this if you've kept up with spell script. Though I might have to think. I mean, I could do it. It's just I got to have an application for it, right? So who knows? There's a lot of things, and I'm approaching this very much from a creative and not. It's still very conceptual at this point. Even though I have all this technology and all this stuff that I'm building here, it is still conceptual. And I kind of want to just carry you along with it and keep you updated so you know I'm not dead. And so you can be excited about this project with me. So basically, stay up to date, stay tuned. I will continue posting tech demos and things and talking about this as I add more features and stuff. You might also hear me talking about working on EverQuest Next, which is always great. Apart from that, if you want to hear information on this, definitely subscribe just as a convenience. And with that, I will bid you farewell. And I might end with a little bit of music here, just a little bit of music. It'll actually be probably one of the more flagship-y songs that I've been writing on the guitar. So here we go. All right, so I'm going to play what I'm currently thinking will be probably the flagship song for the game and what you'll hear as you're flying around through space. Just to kind of give you an idea of the imagery. The two protagonists are basically children, and the game follows them growing up over the course of their life, traveling through the galaxy, and they're inside a spaceship. A spaceship with the personality of a forlorn child just sailing through the stars, and it's an amazing, beautiful experience and everything. So that's your setting for the song. Enjoy.